In this lecture, we're going to go over social processes, attitudes, and behaviors. First off, let's go into group psychology. For this portion, we're going to go over a couple definitions and what they mean. These are things you'll see on the multiple choice on the MCAT, so it's a good idea to be familiar what they mean. Social facilitation is the tendency of people to perform at a different level based on the fact that there are others around. This can be positive or negative. For example, you're more likely to train a little bit harder or perform better in a sporting event if you know there's an audience. Negatively, on the other hand, you may not be able to perform as well on a speech you prepared if you were in the presence of others. De-individuation is the loss of self-awareness in large groups. This will lead to the changes in behavior. When you're in a large group, you tend to think about everyone else and less so about yourself, so you're more likely to just go with it. On the right, you can see that I have a picture of the Third Reich. This is a really common tactic that people use to rally people. The bystander effect states that the observation is, when in a group, individuals are less likely to respond to a person in need. Basically, if a bunch of people were to see someone in distress, they would just assume someone else would take care of it, instead of taking the initiative on their own. Group decision making. First off is polarization. Polarization basically just states that decisions made in a group are more extreme than the thoughts of each individual. So an example of this is, say we were to go to a dog lovers meeting. We all may kind of like dogs, but if we're all together and talking about it, that kind of like might go to something more extreme. Groupthink states that decisions are made based on ideas and solutions within the group. No outside ideas are generally considered, and ethics are disturbed by pressure to conform. Again, this kind of ties into de-individuation. Obviously, when it comes to group psychology, culture has a huge impact. Culture, or the beliefs, ideas, behaviors, actions, and characteristics of a group or society, can vary, and how that cultural identity references you will largely dictate how you think in a group. Assimilation is the process by which a group or individual's culture begins to melt into another. Multiculturalism is the encouragement of multiple cultures within a community to enhance diversity, and subcultures are subsets of cultures within a primary culture. Now that we've gone over some basic definitions, let's go into socialization. What is socialization? Socialization is the process of developing and spreading norms, customs, and beliefs. There are various agents of this. For example, you have your family, your peers, school, and religion. Socialization leads to the formation of social norms, which determine the boundaries of acceptable behavior within a society. When there are no social norms, you're in a state of anomie. There's two categories of how individuals relate to the norm. There is within the norm, which entails conformity, or changing beliefs and behaviors in order to fit into a society. Compliance, when individuals change their behaviors based on requests of others. And obedience, which changes behavior based on command from an authority figure. All three of these will lead to conformity and otherwise acceptance of norms and staying within norms. Conversely, there's outside the norm. Outside the norm states that you deviate from commonly established social norms, and this is common through any culture. Stigma is an extreme disapproval or dislike of a person or group based on perceived differences from the rest of society. Deviance is any violation of social norms or expectations in a society. Generally, the younger generations are more outside the norm than the older generations. Attitudes and behaviors are very important when it comes to group psychology. These are the things that are influenced by the group setting. An attitude is a tendency towards expression of feelings and evaluations. There are affective, behavioral, and cognitive components. More or less, attitude is how you appraise the world around you. The functional attitudes theory states that there are four functional areas of attitude. There's knowledge, ego expression, adaptability, and ego defense. The learning theory states that your attitude is developed through various forms of learning. Direct contact means that you have direct experience with whatever you're developing an attitude of. So, for example, if we were to talk about a religious group, let's say Muslims, if you had direct contact with Muslims, you're more likely to form an attitude because of it, and it's going to be shaped by the fact that you had a direct experience. Direct interaction is in a very similar vein. Direct instruction is when you are taught about, for example, Muslims, going back to our example. And conditioning is a routine habituation and formation of behaviors based around a specific thing. The elaboration likelihood model. Basically, it states that attitudes are formed and changed through different routes of information processing, and it's based on the degree of elaboration. So, if I were to just give you a Cliff Note summary of a group of people, your attitude will probably vary if I were to give you something more detailed. So let's say if I were to give you a detailed explanation of how people in Nevada were, you might be more likely to think of them in a more complex way than if I just said it's a place where casinos are. Lastly, there's the social cognitive theory, which states that attitudes are formed through observations of behavior, personal factors, and environments. Below is a diagram showing this. All three of them are important when it comes to forming attitudes, especially about social settings. So that was a pretty quick one, but that's a basic introduction to some more sociological issues. Up to this point, we've been really talking about individuals and what makes you you. But moving forward, we're going to go on a more macroscopic level. So please join us in the next lecture as we dive into some more sociological issues.